one general cause to muscular dystrophy?
It is hereditary.
Hereditary!
Well, since there are so many different types of muscular dystrophy, the symptoms do vary. They include mental retardation, development of muscle motor skills, difficulty using one or more muscle groups, growing, eyelid drooping, frequent falls, loss of strength in a muscle group, loss of muscle size, and problems walking.
Is there any treatment?
There are no known cures for muscular dystrophy. The goal of the treatment is to control the symptoms. The goal is control. It's control. The goal of the treatment is all about control. With physical therapy. Multiple types of muscular dystrophy. However, the two most prevalent are Duchenne's and Becker's.
What's the prognosis, doctor?
The severity of the disability depends on the type of muscular dystrophy. As we went over before, there are many different types. All types of muscular dystrophy slowly get worse, but how fast this happens varies widely. Some types of muscular dystrophy, such as Duchenne's muscular dystrophy, are deadly. Other types cause little disability, and people with them have a normal lifespan.
We'll be back after this commercial break.
New Ed Hardy, we can turn this to this. Ah, it's hideous! Hardy perfume makes you look beautiful. I guarantee it.
We're now back. Time for Joan and Shauna's interview.
So Joan, what was the hardest thing for you to do while you were in a wheelchair?
Probably opening and closing doors, just because while some of them had the correct handles and everything that are really easy to open, the doors to the auditorium had the push doors, and those were really, really difficult to open because you'd push against them and all that would happen was the wheelchair would go backwards and the door would stay closed.
So Shauna, how was your experience?
It was certainly interesting, Lindsay. I felt almost like alienated from everyone else. Like I was at a lower level than everyone, and they kind of either stared at me or just kept walking right by me like I didn't exist.
Did people like get in your way? Did you have to ask them to excuse you?
They didn't really understand the dimensions of the wheelchair. Like, they didn't realize, and even teachers, like they hold the door open for me, but they hold it at a weird angle so I couldn't really go by. They didn't really understand how much space the wheelchair took up or how much it needed, which also did prove interesting in other classes where teachers thought they had an acceptable layout for kids in wheelchairs, but they really
What was
didn't.
the hardest classroom to get into?
Mrs. Lorenzo's room was probably the hardest to maneuver in because just the way it's set up with all the bookshelves and everything, although it does have the correct kind of desk, it's not a really wide access area, so it's hard to turn. And at one point I actually got stuck in a corner of the room because I could not turn the wheelchair around and I couldn't back up either, so that was probably the worst room to maneuver, but it wasn't too bad overall.
I think the biggest problem I had though was getting in and out of the bathrooms. Because what people don't realize, and what I never realized until I was in the wheelchair, was that in the doorway there's a threshold, and the doors are also weighted. So trying to push and keep the door open while getting into the threshold was near impossible. If I didn't have my friend to help like kick me into the bathroom, I wouldn't have gotten in. Plain and simple.
Overall, it wasn't too hard for me, I think partially because I don't have any problems with my hands or any of the muscles in my upper body or anything, so I could still use my full range of motion with my hands, so I could lean out of the wheelchair to reach the door or to sit at a regular desk instead of at one of the handicapped accessible ones. And I could open the doors if I had to. I can see how it would be a lot harder if you really did have muscular dystrophy, because the muscles in your arms would be just as weak as the muscles in your legs, and you wouldn't be able to do all of that, so you would be a lot more dependent on other people. And so I really am quite impressed with how well people who are stuck in wheelchairs manage to get around.
And now for another commercial break. Stay tuned after we have an interview with Ari.
Camaros. Buy one.
Now it's time for an interview with Ari. Yay! Clap.
Hello, today I'm here with Ariana Cloutier and we are discussing the difficulties of being in a wheelchair. Ari has SMA, which stands for spinal muscular atrophy, which is a subgroup of muscular dystrophy. This disease affects the muscles in the human body. So Ari, my first question is, at what age did this start occurring?
At birth.
How quickly did it progress?
Well, the disease doesn't really progress. It can progress, but it goes very, very, very slowly.
In what ways can it progress?
Like you get weaker, or it's harder to do like things like in your daily life, like picking things up, or it just gets harder.
Okay. Does anyone else in your family have this?
No.
So you're just the odd one.
I am the odd one out, yes, I am.
Does everything cost more because you're in a wheelchair?
Everything just not everything, but like just my wheelchair is a lot, so yeah, that costs.
So what are some ups and downs to the wheelchair accessibility at Montville High School that you've experienced?
The doors are not very accessible. Like, they're heavy, first of all, and they don't have buttons to be pushed to open them, so that's hard.
What is the hardest thing to do at home?
Making my own food.
So obviously you guys can tell that the biggest problem in Montville High School are the doors. Both Joan and Shauna had problems with the doors, and Ari, a person who's in a wheelchair at our school every day, also has issues with the doors. So, I mean, other than that, there's really, we are pretty wheelchair accessible. Buy them.
Happy turtles, happy sticks.
What are the school regulations and laws? Because I'm a little curious.
ADA requirements for 2010 state that all public buildings built after January 26, 1992 must be at least partially accessible, which is basically if you can fix something, you do fix it, unless that is the cost.
We're having brief issues. We'll be right back after this commercial break.
Kraft mac and cheese.
Good for the whole family.
Mac and cheese, even good for Jones.
Valedictorians eat mac and cheese too.
So the ADA requirements revised in 2010 state that basically all public buildings constructed after January 26, 1992 must be at least partially accessible, which means basically if you can fix something, you have to fix it. That is, unless the cost of to fix the building is disproportionate to the overall cost. So like if it costs too much to fix the path into the entrance of the building, then you wouldn't have to if it cost 21% more than the total cost for renovations. And there is priorities that have to be followed when you are renovating a building. and those priorities in order are the entrance, and then a clear accessible path, the bathrooms, phones, water fountains, and then lastly is parking, storage, alarms, stuff like that. So the primary function of a building has to be accessible. So the primary function would basically be any major activity of the place, i.e. the cafeteria must comply if, you know, there's, if it's an office or whatever and there's a cafeteria, that has to comply. Interestingly enough, bathrooms are not in this category unless it's like a rest stop or something where the primary function of the building is to use the bathroom and stretch your legs and everything. Standards apply both to fixed parts of the buildings, like wall-mounted structures, as well as paths and roads. So, parking lots have to be accessible, as do hallways and everything.
South Park! Okay. Thank you, Lawyer Joan.
You're welcome.
Your time and cooperation. It's been real.
It's a dog. It's a big dog. It's already treated.
There is no cure.
So sad.
Thank you, Chrissy, for that lovely interruption. And such a tight fit that I couldn't move around, and I actually got stuck sideways all the way. I could mostly fit at. It was a little too short, though. But other than that, can I say anything without you two taking it for granted?
Few examples and examples of the regulations and requirements stated by the ADA.
The way the room was configured, the spaces were so tight that I actually got stuck between two desks, and I couldn't move, and they had to actually move the desk for me to get out of the class. So that was probably the most difficult, but that was just in the room configuration.
And how does that make you feel?
That's so horrible.
Frickin'! I can say frickin' in this.
This is actually
Hayes, I'm pretty sure you can say frickin', right? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you can.